Okay, last month's Finance and Audit Committee took a preliminary look at the budget process that we're developing for the next fiscal year. After kind of a brief outline of that, we reviewed and refined the policy statement that's before you now. It addresses some of the issues that are arising in our union contract negotiations, and basically it expresses what we think is the consensus, we hope is the consensus view of the board in going into those negotiations. For the new board members, I'm sure you've been briefed on this, and this is one of the things we're currently dealing with. So I, at the last session, offered this policy statement and invited comment about it prior to this session, and we would hope that you've had a chance to review it and are prepared, perhaps as early as today, to adopt this at kind of this pretty critical juncture in our negotiations. So I guess that's what I'm putting forward.
Okay, so following any discussion, we would vote to adopt this as a policy statement of our board?
It certainly is the way you would typically do that policy statement, but you usually don't have very many policy statements, so you can do it probably in a number of different ways. But the answer is yes, I think a vote would be the best.
Okay, let's we'll do that then. So open up for anyone who would care to comment on the proposed statement. Yes.
I know the board doesn't involve ourselves on the day-to-day negotiations, but the statement down here about the retiree health benefits and the following one, the fair share of the burden of both customer and employees.
Is that the last paragraph?
Yeah, down there. Can you, I mean, is there some reason we're voting on that right now without seeing what the contract is?
Well, I guess our review started with the CAC's, and that's what I did back to last year, the presentation of the Citizens Advisory Committee that reviews budget and so forth, cited healthcare as being the aspect of the negotiation that was especially crucial in terms of bending down the costs going forward for the agency, and they called it unsustainable then, and so I think that's why we called it out. I think that's where we called it out here, because it's a crucial aspect.
Right, and ultimately, Lynn,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that we ultimately the contract comes to the board for approval.
Yeah, I know it's
right.
And you're right, Lynn, about not getting involved in the day-to-day. I just want to make that clear. We're not involved in the day-to-day contract negotiations.
Yeah.
It's not us. It's just a broader policy statement saying we recognize, this is coming from the Finance Committee too, recognizing what we have to do to control costs.
Right, and again, for the benefit of primarily our two new board members, that the negotiations between TriMet and the ATU are very structured, and there's an enormous amount of process that has to be maintained during that, and of course it is. We felt as a board that we'd like to at least provide a somewhat of a policy level statement as to the overall guidance that we see and concern for the overall ability of the agency to be able to continue to afford to provide the level of service that would be expected. So that's what this is primarily aimed at doing, is laying out somewhat of an overriding guiding principle for those who are involved in the day-to-day process to be aware that this is a sense of the board.
I just want to say, Rick, I read it last month when you passed it out, and I just want to say I appreciate the way that it is well written. It's very very succinct and very, I think it addresses some of the issues we've been seeing over the last months and years, and so I think it's great, and I suggest we adopt it.
Okay, are there other comments? Then I would ask if there's a motion to approve this policy statement from this board of directors.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?